Park stood in the gray office of the United Space Authority and tried not to laugh. The general behind the desk was completely serious. He had medals on his chest and a frown on his face, and he was asking her to save humanity's reputation with soup. "Chef Park," he said, sliding a folder across the desk, "you have been selected for a diplomatic mission of the highest importance." Opened the folder. Inside were pictures of a massive space station shaped like a ring. Aliens of every shape walked through its corridors. Some had tentacles. Some had crystals growing from their bodies. One looked like a walking mushroom. "Orbital Station Harmony 7, the general continued. 42 species, 300 permanent residents, and they have just opened an interstellar cafeteria. The Galactic Council believes that sharing food is the fastest way to build trust between species." "Looked up, and you want me to cook for them?" "I want you to show them what human food means. Every other species has sent their representatives. The crystalline beings brought their light absorption gels. The amphibians brought their algae cakes. Humanity needs to send something that represents who we are." Thought about her grandmother's kitchen back in. The smell of bubbling in a stone pot. The sound of her grandfather slurping noodles at the table. Food was never just food in her family. It was love made visible. "I'll do it," she said. 3 weeks later, floated through the docking tunnel of Harmony 7 with 6 cargo crates behind her. Each crate was marked with careful labels in both Korean and Galactic Standard. Sesame oil, short grain rice, dried anchovies, and one very old stone pot wrapped in protective foam. The station smelled strange. Clean but strange. Like metal and something sweet that could not name. The gravity felt slightly wrong, pulling at her in ways that made her stomach turn. A tall man was waiting for her at the end of the tunnel. He had tired eyes and a tablet in his hands, and he looked at her crates with obvious worry. "Chef Park, I'm Lee. I've been assigned to help you with whatever this is." Smiled and extended her hand. "Nice to meet you. Do you like kimchi?" Did not shake her hand. "Chef Park, I need you to understand something. I have spent 3 years on this station studying alien biology. I have seen species that breathe liquid nitrogen. I have seen species that eat radiation. And I can tell you right now that half of what you have in those crates could kill someone." "Only half?" "This is serious. Capsaicin alone is lethal to at least 12 species on this station. They go into shock from high sodium content. The prismatic collective can shatter from strong flavors. You cannot just start cooking Earth food here." Walked past him, pulling her crates toward the cargo lift. "Then I will cook carefully." Followed her, his voice rising. "You don't understand. These species have never developed cuisine. They don't eat for pleasure. Food is fuel to them, nutrients, efficiency. The concept of flavor is alien to them in the most literal sense." Stopped and turned to face him. She was shorter than him by a full head, but something in her eyes made him step back. "Dr. Lee," she said quietly, "my grandmother survived a war. She fed her family for 6 months with nothing but rice, wild vegetables, and gochujang she made with her own hands. She taught me that food is not fuel. Food is memory. Food is love. Food is how we tell each other that we want them to live." She poked his chest with one finger. "I have read every biological file you have on this station. I know which species can handle heat and which ones cannot. I know about sodium sensitivity and protein allergies and the fact that they absorb nutrients through their feet. I am not stupid. I am a chef." Stared at her. For a long moment he said nothing. "Fine," he finally muttered, "but I am reviewing every dish before it leaves your kitchen." "Good, I could use a taste tester." The cafeteria kitchen was large and empty and very, very clean. The walls were white. The counters were white. Everything smelled like nothing at all. Hated it immediately. She spent her first day unpacking. The stone pot went on the main counter, right where everyone could see it. The containers went on the shelf, their red color bright against the white walls. The sat in a temperature-controlled unit that had fought for 3 hours to get installed. As she worked, aliens walked past the kitchen window. They stared at her with eyes of every color and shape. Some had no eyes at all, waved at each of them. One alien stopped at the window. It was tall and made entirely of living crystal, its body throwing small rainbows across the floor. It watched open a jar of kimchi. "What is that?" it asked, its voice like wind chimes. "Fermented cabbage," said. "With garlic and ginger and chili, it is very good for you." The crystal alien leaned closer. "It smells aggressive." Laughed, "That means it is ready." That night, alone in her small quarters, looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth. Somewhere out there was her grandmother's kitchen, probably empty now, the stone pots cold. She pulled out her tablet and opened her notes. In 1 week, the station would hold its Unity dinner. 300 delegates from 42 species, all gathered in one hall, and had promised to make kimchi. She smiled in the darkness. They had no idea what was coming. The first morning started small. She woke before the station's artificial sunrise and walked to the kitchen in the quiet dark. By the time the lights came on, she had prepared 12 small dishes and arranged them on a long table near the window. Banchan, the side dishes of Korea, pickled radish, bright yellow and crunchy, seasoned spinach, dark green with sesame, steamed eggs, soft and golden, cucumber salad with just a touch of chili, and in the center a small bowl of kimchi, glowing red like a warning. Arrived at exactly 700 hours. He looked at the table with the expression of a man watching a bomb being built. "What is this?" he asked. "Breakfast," said, "for anyone who wants to try." "You labeled everything." Pointed to the small cards in front of each dish. Each card had the name of the food, a list of ingredients in Galactic Standard, and a row of colored dots. Green meant safe for that species. Yellow meant caution. Red meant do not eat. "The kimchi is red for almost everyone," noted. "The kimchi is honest." Word spread quickly. By midday, a line had formed outside the cafeteria. Aliens pushed against the windows, pointing and whispering to each other. Most of them had never seen food with color before. Their own meals came in gray tubes and clear packages, efficient, boring. The first brave soul was a massive amphibian with 4 arms and skin the color of a stormy sea. He walked up to the table, looked down at with yellow eyes, and made a rumbling sound deep in his chest. "Human," he said, "I have eaten rocks. I have eaten toxic fungus from the caves of my home world. I have the strongest digestive system in this sector." He pointed one thick finger at the kimchi. "Give me that." Handed him the bowl with a smile. Put the entire thing in his mouth. For a moment, nothing happened. Then his eyes went wide. His throat made a strange clicking sound. He chewed slowly, as if trying to understand what was happening inside his mouth. "It burns," he said finally. Nodded, "Yes. It burns, and it is sour, and it is. I do not have a word for this." "Delicious." Was quiet for a long moment. Then he slammed all 4 hands on the table and roared, "More." The crowd pushed forward. Suddenly everyone wanted to try, and worked side by side, checking species tags and handing out appropriate dishes. The spinach was popular with the plant-based beings. The steamed egg attracted the protein eaters. The pickled radish disappeared so fast that had to make more. Not everyone was happy. The crystalline supervisor of the cafeteria watched from across the room with visible anger. Its body had turned a dark shade of purple, which quietly explained meant it was upset. When waved at it, turned and walked away, leaving a trail of angry chimes behind. "It does not like you," said. "It does not like change. That is different." The small feathered diplomat named refused to come close. She stood at the far end of the hall, her feathers puffed up in alarm, and shouted across the room. "I can smell it from here. What are you doing to that food? Why is there smoke? Why is it that color? Is it dying? Held up a piece of seasoned spinach. It is just vegetables, very safe. I can see the heat coming off it. You cooked it with fire. Fire is for destruction, not for eating. Leaned toward. Her species evolved on an ice world. Thermal food is genuinely terrifying to them. Thought for a moment. Then she took a fresh cucumber from her supplies, sliced it thin, and dressed it with only salt and sesame oil. No heat. She walked across the hall slowly, holding the plate in front of her like a peace offering. Watched her approach with wide, fearful eyes. "This is cold," said gently. "No fire, just a vegetable and some flavoring. Would you like to try?" Looked at the cucumber. She looked at. Very slowly, she reached out one small claw and took a single slice. She put it in her beak. For a moment, nothing happened. Then her feathers slowly settled down. Her eyes grew soft. "It is pleasant," she admitted. "The salt makes it interesting." Smiled. That is just the beginning. By evening, was exhausted but happy. The table was empty. Every dish was gone. Aliens who had never tasted flavor before were walking around the station in a daze, trying to describe what they had experienced. Then the screaming started. 3 traders had found the japchae, had made it that afternoon glass noodles with vegetables and beef, seasoned with soy sauce and sesame oil. It was a mild dish by human standards, safe, according to her charts. But they were lying on the floor of the cafeteria, their bodies rigid, their eyes staring at nothing. Other aliens backed away in horror. Someone was calling for medical help. Grabbed S's arm. "What did you put in that?" "Nothing dangerous, just soy sauce and—" "Soy sauce has glutamates, umami. They have never experienced umami before." Before could respond, 2 security officers appeared at her side. They were tall beings with hard shells and no expressions. "Chef Park," one said, "you will come with us. The station council wishes to speak with you immediately." Looked at the fallen, at the frightened crowd, at its pale face. "Are they dead?" she whispered. "Unknown," the officer said. "That is what the council will decide." As they led her away, looked back at her kitchen. The stone pot sat on the counter, waiting. The kimchi sat in its jar, patient and red. She had come here to share her grandmother's love with the galaxy. Now she might have killed someone with noodles. The council chamber was cold and round and filled with aliens who looked at like she was a murderer. She stood in the center of the room, alone under a bright white light, while 12 council members sat in a circle around her. Was among them, its crystal body dark with satisfaction. Chef Park, the head counselor, began. It was an ancient being, soft and gray, with too many eyes. "You stand before this council accused of poisoning 3 citizens. How do you answer?" His heart was pounding, but she kept her voice steady. "I did not poison anyone. I fed them. They collapsed after eating your food." "Are they dead?" The counselor paused. "They are, not dead. The medical team reports that they are in a state of neurological overload. Their brains are experiencing something they have never experienced before." Flavor said. The room erupted in noise. Aliens shouted in languages could not understand. His chiming voice rose above the others. "This is exactly what I warned about," cried. "Human food is dangerous. It is aggressive. It attacks the senses with no care for the consequences. This kitchen should be closed immediately." "They ate something that was clearly labeled," argued. "I had warnings on every dish. They chose to ignore them." They did not know what they were ignoring. Your labels mean nothing to species who have never experienced taste. Wanted to shout back, but she forced herself to stay calm. She thought about her grandmother who had faced harder things than angry aliens. She thought about the war, the hunger, the cold nights. Her grandmother had never given up. Neither would she. "May I speak?" she asked. The head counselor raised one of its many eyes. "You may." Took a deep breath. "Where I come from, food is not just fuel. Food is how we show love. When a child is sick, we make them soup. When someone dies, we gather and eat together. When two people get married, they share a meal. Food carries our memories, our traditions, our history. Every dish I make has a story." She looked around the room. Some aliens were listening, others were not. They did not die. They experienced something new, something overwhelming. But overwhelming is not the same as dangerous. The first time any species saw the stars, were they not overwhelmed? The first time you met beings from other worlds, was that not frightening? New things are always strange. That does not make them wrong. Stepped forward. Pretty words, but words do not change the fact that 3 beings are in the medical bay because of your cooking. At that moment, the doors of the council chamber opened. Walked in, his tablet in his hands, looking nervous but determined. Behind him came the massive amphibian and at least 20 other aliens who had eaten at its table that day. "I apologize for the interruption," said, not sounding sorry at all. "But I have medical data that the council needs to see." He walked to the center of the room and stood beside. His hands were shaking, but his voice was clear. "I have been monitoring them since they collapsed. They are not in pain. They are not dying. Their neural scans show that they are experiencing a massive release of positive neurotransmitters. In human terms, they are feeling extreme pleasure." The council murmured. The head counselor leaned forward. "Pleasure? Their species has never experienced umami before. It is a flavor that humans call savory. When they tasted it for the first time, their brains could not process the sensation. They became overwhelmed. But the medical team says they will wake up within hours and they will wake up happy." Looked at. Chef Park did not poison them. She gave them joy. Stepped forward, his 4 arms crossed over his chest. "I ate the humans' food today, the red cabbage. It burned my mouth and made my eyes water." He grinned, showing rows of sharp teeth. "It was the best thing I have ever eaten. I will fight anyone who tries to close her kitchen." More aliens spoke up. The being made of light said the sesame oil had reminded it of its home sun. A small creature with wings said the rice had a texture it had never felt before and wanted to feel again. Even a group of the usually silent shadow beings admitted they had enjoyed watching others eat, even if they themselves could not. The head counselor was quiet for a long time. Finally, it looked at. "Chef Park, it seems you have defenders." "I have guests," corrected gently. "I fed them, now they are family." Made an angry sound. "This is sentimentality. We are talking about safety, about standards." "Then let us have standards," said. "Chef Park and I will work together. I will review every dish for biological compatibility. We will have medical staff on standby at every meal. We will label everything clearly and explain what each dish contains. But we will not close the kitchen. We will not reject something just because it is new." The council debated for another hour, stood in the center of the room, tired and hungry and wishing she had eaten breakfast, but she did not move. Finally, the head counselor raised its voice. "The council has reached a decision. Chef Park may continue her work. However, all dishes must be approved by Dr. Lee before serving. Medical staff will be present during all meal times, and Chef Park." The counselor's many eyes focused on her. "You will teach. If human food is truly about love and memory, then share that knowledge. Help other species understand." Bowed her head, "I will." As she left the council chamber, walked beside her. They were both quiet until they reached the cafeteria. "You did not have to defend me," said. Shrugged. "I told you I would taste every dish. I take my job seriously." Looked at him for a long moment. Then she smiled and held out her hand. "Partners." Finally shook it. "Partners, but I am still not eating that kimchi." The week before the Unity dinner was the hardest week of life. She slept only 4 hours each night. Her hands were always busy, chopping, stirring, tasting, adjusting. Was beside her every moment, checking ingredients against his database, making sure nothing would hurt anyone. They argued constantly. "You cannot serve this much garlic. said, pointing at a bowl of sauce. They will smell it through their feet for days. Fine, I will make a version without garlic. And the chili in this soup is too strong. That is the point of kimchi. Not for beings who will burst into flames if they eat it. Took a deep breath. Then I will make 3 versions, strong, mild, and, what do you call it when there is no spice at all? Sad said, but he was almost smiling. They made a system. Every dish would have multiple versions adjusted for different species. The meat dishes would have vegetable alternatives. The hot dishes would have cold alternatives. And for species that could not eat solid food at all, worked with the station's holographic team to create something special. Projections of each dish with aroma diffusers, so beings could at least experience the smell and the sight, even if they could not taste. Visited the kitchen every day. The small feathered diplomat had become fascinated with human cooking, even though she was still afraid of fire. She stood at a safe distance and asked endless questions. Why do you cut the vegetables so small? So they cook evenly and absorb more flavor. Why does that pot have to boil so long? Because the tofu needs time to soak up the broth. Why do you keep smelling everything? Smiled. Because my grandmother taught me that your nose knows before your tongue. If it smells right, it will taste right. Feathers ruffled thoughtfully. Your grandmother must have been very wise. She still is in here, touched her heart. Every time I cook, she is with me. The night before the dinner, the finally woke up, brought the news while she was preparing the final batch of kimchi. They are asking for more japchae, he said. Stop stirring, they are not angry. They said they have never felt so alive. They want to know what else you can make. For the first time in a week, laughed. The Unity dinner was held in the Grand Hall of Harmony 7. It was the largest room on the station, with walls that showed live images of space outside. Stars sparkled, distant galaxies glowed, and in the center of it all, 300 delegates from 42 species sat at long tables waiting. Stood in the kitchen doorway looking out at the crowd. She saw Still Purple sitting at the far end. She saw at the front, rubbing his 4 hands together in excitement. She saw, perched on a special cushion, watching the kitchen with wide eyes. Ready? Asked. No, said, let's do it anyway. The servers were a mix of species, all trained by during the week. They carried trays of banchan to every table, each dish marked with its colored dots. Then came the main courses, bulgogi in its 3 versions, bibimbap with vegetables from 12 worlds, and finally, the kimchi. Had made in her grandmother's stone pot. It was the original recipe, unchanged for generations. Pork belly, aged kimchi, soft tofu, and a broth that had simmered for 6 hours. The smell filled the entire hall. Walked through the tables explaining each dish. He told them about his grandmother, about the war she survived, about the meals she made with almost nothing, about the way food became love in her hands and how that love was now in the food before them. This is not just dinner, he said to the crowd. This is memory, this is culture, this is humanity sharing the best of itself with all of you. Then they ate. Attacked the kimchi with all 4 hands. Broth spilled down his chest, but he did not care. He was making sounds of pure happiness. They ate the mild version slowly, savoring each bite, their eyes closed in concentration. One of them started to cry, but they were tears of joy. Had a special plate made just for her, cold vegetables arranged in the shape of a flower with no heat involved. She ate it slowly, carefully, and when she finished, she looked at and nodded. It was the highest compliment her species could give. Even tried something. A single spoon of steamed egg, the mildest dish on the table, the crystal being put it in what passed for a mouth and stood very still. For a moment was afraid. Then's body shifted from dark purple to a soft, pale pink. It is gentle, admitted quietly. I did not expect gentle. At the end of the night, the Galactic Cultural Council made an announcement. They wanted human chefs on 12 more stations. They wanted to build a cultural exchange program around food. They wanted to spread this new art form across the sector. Stood in the kitchen, listening to the applause from the grand hall. Her hands were burned from cooking. Her feet hurt from standing. She had never been more exhausted in her life. But she was also crying. Appeared beside her, holding 2 cups of tea. "You did it," he said. "We did it." He handed her a cup. "I tried the original kimchi." Looked at him in surprise, and took a long sip of his tea. "Your grandmother was right, the nose knows." He never said anything more, but noticed he took a second bowl before the night was over. The grand hall slowly emptied. The stars kept shining outside, and in her small kitchen looked at her grandmother's stone pot, still warm, and smiled. This was only the beginning. 1 year passed. Still woke before the artificial sunrise, still walked to her kitchen in the quiet dark, still felt her grandmother's presence in every dish she made. But everything else had changed. The Interstellar Cafeteria was no longer a single kitchen. It was a cultural center, with cooking stations for 12 different species. Human chefs worked beside crystalline beings and amphibian masters and feathered artists. Each brought their own traditions, their own memories, their own love. And on the first day of every month, the station celebrated Earth Night. It had started as a small thing. A few aliens asking if we'd cook again. A few more joining them. A few more after that. Now, Earth Night was famous across the sector. Ships came from distant systems just to taste kimchi. Diplomats used it as neutral ground for difficult negotiations. Young aliens saved their credits for months just to try bulgogi. Had trained 47 chefs in the past year. Some were human, sent from Earth to continue the exchange program. Others were aliens who had discovered a passion they never knew they had. Was one of them. The giant amphibian had given up his trading business to travel the galaxy as a food critic. He wrote reviews that were famous for their drama and their honesty. If said a dish was good, restaurants filled overnight. If said a dish was bad, chefs retired in shame. He still came to Harmony 7 every few months. He still demanded kimchi the moment he arrived. And he still ate it with all 4 hands, broth dripping everywhere, completely happy. Had become's most unexpected student. The small feathered diplomat had overcome her fear of fire one careful step at a time. First, she watched. Then she stood closer. Then she touched a warm pot. Then finally, she lit a flame herself. Now she ran the cold food section of the cafeteria. Her specialty was salads arranged in beautiful patterns, each one a work of art. She had learned that food could be beautiful without heat, that cold could carry flavor just as well as fire. Her grandmother would have been proud. Even had changed. The crystalline supervisor had retired from cafeteria management and opened a small restaurant on the other side of the station. It served nutrient-paced fusion, combining the efficiency of galactic food with the philosophy of human spices. Used very small amounts of flavor, just enough to make the paste interesting, never enough to shatter anyone. The restaurant was called Gentle, and it was always full. He still reviewed every dish. He still worried about biological compatibility. He still argued about garlic and chili and fermentation times. But now when he argued, he was smiling. They had grown close over the year, not in the dramatic way of old stories, with grand confessions and passionate declarations. They had grown close in the quiet way of people who work together every day, who share meals and silences and small jokes that no one else would understand. Still caught him sneaking extra portions of japchae when he thought no one was looking. He still pretended the kimchi was too strong for him, even though she had seen him finish an entire bowl last month. They never talked about what they were to each other. They did not need to. It was on a quiet morning, exactly 1 year after arrived, that the new ship docked at Harmony 7. was in her kitchen, preparing for the day's service, when appeared at the door. "There is someone at the docking bay asking for you," he said. "A young chef from Earth. She says she was assigned to continue your work." Set down her knife and walked to the docking bay. The young woman standing there was nervous and small, with a case of ingredients beside her and a book in her hands. She had the look of someone who had traveled a very long way and was not sure if she had made the right choice. "Chef Park," the young woman asked, "I am. They sent me to learn from you." Looked at her, at the nervous hands, at the careful way she held her case as if it contained treasure, at the book, which could now see was a handwritten recipe collection, old and worn. "Is that from your grandmother?" asked. His eyes widened. "How did you know?" Smiled. "Lucky guess, come with me." She led through the station, past the aliens who nodded and waved, past the cafeteria where students were already preparing for lunch, past the spot where they had fallen and the window where had first refused to come close. Finally, they reached the kitchen. His grandmother's stone pot sat on the main counter where it had sat for the entire year. Beside it had cleared a space. "Put your grandmother's book there," she said. Place the recipe book carefully beside the pot. Two legacies, two grandmothers, two stories coming together in one small kitchen in the middle of space. "I do not know if I can do what you did," admitted. "I am just a cook. I do not know how to change the galaxy." Laughed softly. "I did not change the galaxy. I made soup. I made side dishes. I fed people who were hungry. The galaxy changed itself." She put her hand on shoulder and turned her to face the window. Outside, aliens of every species were walking by. Some waved. Some pressed their faces against the glass, looking at the kitchen with curiosity. Some were regulars who came every day. "The first rule of this kitchen," said, "is that you never apologize for feeding someone's soul. Food is memory. Food is love. Food is how we tell strangers that they are welcome and friends that we are glad they exist. Every dish you make is a gift. Never forget that." Nodded slowly. "My grandmother used to say something similar. She said every meal is a conversation, even if no one speaks." "Your grandmother was wise." "She was. I miss her every day." Squeezed her shoulder. "Then let her speak through your hands. That is what cooking is. Giving voice to the people we have lost." They stood there for a moment, two human women in an alien station, surrounded by stars and strangers and the smell of something good beginning to cook. Then walked to the stove and lit the flame. "Now," she said, "let me show you how to make kimchi. We have 300 guests coming tonight and my grandmother does not accept excuses." Smiled, opened her grandmother's book, and joined her at the stove. Outside, the galaxy kept turning. Ships came and went. Species met and traded and argued and made peace. The universe was vast and cold and full of dangers. But in one small kitchen on one small station, two women were making soup. And that in the end was enough.